What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Fire Sports Takes podcast. On today's episode, we're going to recap the NBA Finals, and then I have a top 15 defensive end list in the NFL. It only felt right that we attacked the defensive ends after the Myles Garrett Jared Verse trade, and I also did drop the ball. Last week, I told you guys I'd have this on Wednesday because I think it's every Wednesday we're doing a top 10 list. And I simply didn't record because Tuesday night I went out and shot a 115 on 18 holes and got absolutely obliterated. Got home, I said, no shot. My pressing that record button tonight wouldn't have been fair to you guys, would not have been fair to myself and the standard we hold here at Fire Sports Takes because I was absolutely obliterated. So either way, that was just never going to happen. Game one of the NBA Finals, don't remember it. Game two of the NBA Finals was working, kind of caught the fourth quarter. So we are all over the place, all over the place. But either way, we have the top 10 edge rushers in the NFL locked in, ready to go for today. I just spent probably an hour and a half discussing and formulating this list with Claude AI. And I got to tell you what, man, I'm very impressed with what they're doing over there at Anthropic HQ because Claude AI might be the greatest tool I've ever had in my entire life. I mean, it just expedites the Google search process in 2.5 seconds. Research has grown exponentially faster because of my use of Claude AI, and I have a full-on conversation with it. And it's just helped me formulate this list in a consistent manner to the type of list that I'm trying to construct here, and that is complete edge rushers. People think of edge rushers, they think of sacks, they think of that's it really, sacks and pressure rate. They got to set the edge in the run game too. So this top 10 list of edge rushers is going to encapsulate all of that. So you are going to see a few guys that have really good sack totals. What do they do for me in the run game? Are they a liability on 1st and 10 and your team is down a touchdown in the fourth quarter? Can they set the edge in the run game? Can they make plays in the run game as well as be a premier pass rusher? And there are players that do the premier pass rush stuff, but don't set the edge. They're selfish. They get uphill. The Mark Gastineaus of the world. Shout out Jets all-time sack leader. He did deserve the sack record before Myles Garrett broke it last year, and Michael Strahan broke the record because Brett Favre gave a sack, but that's neither here nor there. I'm not upset about it. But either way, this list is the best top 10 edge rusher list you guys will see on the internet. I guarantee it. So make sure you guys stay tuned. We also are going to talk about the NBA Finals, and I said that the New York Knicks. And I listen, I've not been able to watch these whole series. So I've watched highlights and I've watched Twitter and I watched the fourth quarter of I think both games. That I don't remember game one that much, I'll be honest. But either way, through the first two games of the NBA Finals, Karl Anthony Towns is the MVP, and we all owe him an apology, myself included, because I said he is not good enough to be a number two option on a championship winning team, and it's looking like he is that. And he hasn't even been the number two option. He's been the best player in this series. I thought there was no chance that Karl Anthony Towns would be able to defend Victor Wembanyama, and he has cut his efficiency down in almost half from what it was in the Western Conference Finals. Not only that, but Wemby has not been able to guard Karl Anthony Towns. If he didn't get into foul trouble early in the second half in game two, Cat could have gone for 30, 35, 40. But he got into foul trouble a little bit on some ticky-tacky stuff that's neither here nor there. But you are a player like Cat, who's known for getting into foul trouble often. You're not going to get a favorable whistle. But either way, Karl Anthony Towns has been the most valuable player. He has been the reason the Knicks are up 2-0 in this series for his ability to not just defend and limit Wemby from an efficiency standpoint, but his ability to score the basketball. He's been so great as a playmaker these entire playoffs as well. Make no mistake about it. Jalen Brunson has hit some really clutch shots in games 1 and 2, but Karl Anthony Towns has been the most valuable player. And then Josh Hart, man, that really fires me up, Josh Hart. Players like that don't get enough love. And they usually do this time of year because every championship team, and I made this point in my top 10 players in the NBA Finals list, every championship team has a guy like Josh Hart who's not going to fill up the points and assists, and she's not going to drop 30, although he's capable of doing it if he gets hot from three. He's not going to drop 30, but he's going to give you 15 offensive rebounds. And he said, or 15 rebounds, 8 of them on the offensive glass. And what he did say to somebody, he said, yeah, these guys just get rebounds. I get rebounds that crush a team's soul. I'm paraphrasing. I mean, he basically got that. He stole that quote from me when I was playing at the Rec, because I do get rebounds and take it. He is just everything that I am as a basketball player, and I appreciate that so much. And I do got to tell you one thing. this is a little bittersweet for me, and let me explain why. I am a New York Jets, if this is your first time listening, New York Jets, New York Mets, Brooklyn Nets fan. Arguably the worst fandom in the history of sports. My favorite player on the New York Jets in the history, my favorite player in the history of football is Darrelle Revis. You know where Darrelle Revis went to college? University of Pittsburgh. Do you know where I went to college? West Virginia University. On top of that, do you know where Darrelle Revis won his Super Bowl with? The New England Patriots. I hate the Patriots every fiber of my being. So you could argue I have one of the worst existences as a fan. Shout out to the West Virginia Mountaineers. We're going to Omaha. That's neither here nor there. And we'll get into them momentarily. So watching the New York Knicks go on this run, while I am a Brooklyn Nets fan, and nobody likes the Nets. Nobody likes the Nets in New York. So a lot of my Jets fans are Jets fans' friends are New York Knicks fans. A lot of my Mets fans' friends are New York Knicks fans. I'm incredibly happy for them. They deserve it. They deserve it. But at the same time, it's like, why not? When is it my time to be happy? And I'm not going to go on this whole, like, oh, woe is me type of thing. As I've said this a million times, I'm going to say it a million more times. If my biggest problem in life is that my sports teams fucking suck, then I must be living a pretty damn good life, okay? So, like, I guess the quote, if you put my problems in a hat with everybody's problems in the world, you'll take yours right back. Yeah. Jets can suck forever if this is the life I'm going to live. But on the flip side of that coin, seeing New York being burned to the ground, it's like a little bit of salt in the wound with what could possibly happen if the Jets are good. My friend Jake Letta is an absolute beautician, New York Jets fan, diehard Knicks fans. He was around in the Kevin Knox days. He was around Emmanuel Quickly. No, Emmanuel Quickly's not a bum. Who was Emmanuel Mudiay? Was that their point guard at one point? Like he's been around. He's been here, and he is a diehard Jets fan as well. So happy for him. He's a good guy. He deserves this. He deserves this. But then there's some Knicks fans that are just so fucking annoying. Like there's friends of the program will be familiar with Jake Letta. Then friends of the program will be familiar with Devin Ducey. That is the spectrum of Knicks fans that I'm dealing with here. The diehards and the douchies. You don't want to be a douchey. So on one part, I am happy for Knicks fans that are civil, that are Jets fans also, that haven't had this taste of success virtually their entire lives since Rex Ryan. And it's not like being a Nets fan, it's not like the Nets-Knicks thing. Like, I don't like the Knicks, obviously, but it's not like a Yankees-Mets thing. Or fuck the Yankees, pretentious scumbags, more concerned about wearing a Yankees hat than actually rooting for the team. That's not Jake Letta, who I'm talking, or a friend of the program, Jake Goodness. But it's different. Like the Nets Knicks thing is not as heated. It's not a real rivalry like the Subway Series is, but I obviously don't like them. But and they're a hard team to not root for either because Jalen Brunson's so incredibly likable. You have the three Villanova guys. Mikal Bridges, listen, the Nets obviously 5 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges. That's a good deal. You do that every day. It's not like I was kind of rooting for him to do bad, just in the sense of I hope he doesn't turn into some nasty player that we traded, like a franchise carrying player, which he's not. I think Mikal Bridges is the best role player in the NBA. And that's what he is. Don't make no mistake about it. But again, he had another really efficient shooting night in game 2. And he had his mid-range jumper from the baseline is pretty much automatic at this point. And he's been such a good underrated defender as well. I mean, he was second defensive player of the year voting in Phoenix at one point. And when he was on the Nets did make the playoffs with him as the primary scorer. So like there is some like he can carry a little bit of a load, and he was worth 5 first round picks. I think are the most overvalued asset, unless it's our top 5, 10 pick, obviously in the NBA. But it's just a really overvalued asset if you are a team that's contending every year. Just fuck off. Give them your first round picks, man. Give it to them. For a guy like Mikal Bridges, who's been incredibly efficient throughout these playoffs, minus the first 5 games of the playoffs, and he's a great defender. Like they're worth it. They won the trade, and I think the Nets aren't like worse without. Like the Nets needed to move off him and get some draft capital as well. So I think win-win trade. Win-win trade. Like every time there's a trade in any sport, there's always an narrative like one team has to have gotten the better hand over the other. Why can't the trade just work for both sides? Like this Nets trade, although initially it looked like the Nets fleeced the Knicks 5 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges, but then all of a sudden you look back, Mikal Bridges had 2 incredibly clutch defensive plays back-to-back in games 1 and 2 against Boston last year in the Eastern Conference semis. He's been huge for them in the Eastern Conference semis this year and in the Eastern Conference finals. He just had a really efficient shooting day in the NBA finals. He has experience in the NBA finals, and that's showing because the Knicks don't look daunted by the moment whatsoever. And then they just took 2 games from the Western Conference champions, and nobody gave them the Knicks a chance, myself included. And what a fucking clown I look like saying, yeah, Knicks haven't played a defense like the Spurs, yada, yada, yada. It doesn't matter, clearly. I thought we'd see some offensive regression. That has not been the case, man. It's unbelievable how dominant of a run. The Knicks have not lost a game since the Jets drafted Cade Klubnik. The draft was like a month and a half ago. That's insane. That is insane. Good for New York Knicks. Good for Knicks fans. And yeah, it's awesome. Let's talk a little bit college baseball World Series, man. And I'm gonna try not to get emotional here. I'm gonna try not to get emotional. But talking about West Virginia University, I was thinking about this spiel that I'm about to go on earlier today, and I felt it's like every time West Virginia sports are good at something, the national narrative is like, oh, look at W getting their moment. Oh, they're so passionate, blah, 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 blah. West Virginia fans are some of the most loyal, passionate fans in all of the world. That state is constantly overlooked. It's constantly the butt of jokes. It's constantly trolled on and ripped apart. West Virginia University, oh, blah, 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 party school. They let everybody in, 50% graduation rate. Who cares? Well, that state, and I've been I've been around an entire state. I've been in Beckley, West Virginia, where there's a population of 50 fucking people. I've been to Martinsburg. Obviously, I lived in Morgantown. I've been all over that state, one of the most beautiful states that I've ever driven across because I was a furniture delivery boy during my years as an undergrad at West Virginia University. Now, I've driven all across that entire state. Some of the nicest people on the planet, and they love West Virginia University with every ounce of their fiber. And it's definitely not like it's a poor state. There's no mistake about it. Like West Virginia University is like these people's purpose. And the fact that it's like it's always like a flash in the pan across national media. When West Virginia is good, they're like, oh wow, look at this atmosphere. It's like that all the time. Like this isn't just oh, they're good, so West Virginia fans are showing up. No, nobody gives a fuck more about their state's school sports program than West Virginia fans do. And the fact that they're getting their moment, they're getting their recognition is unbelievable. Ren Baker, the athletic director for West Virginia University, has done a terrific job dumping a bunch of assets into this baseball program, building, which I think is going to be one of the powerhouse baseball programs going forward, not because of the recruitment now, after all of these high school kids are going to see the energy and the atmosphere that can be brought to Morgantown, West Virginia, but the facilities are top line. You have MLB pitchers coming and practicing at West Virginia University baseball facilities because of how high tech it is. And I don't want to break down the whole analytical thing with baseball because that's just not my shit. So I'm not gonna like overstep here. But I just saw an article and a video like their technology, their pitching simulator is top of the line. MLB players are traveling to Morgantown, West Virginia to use it. So this is not just the beginning. They made the Super Regionals back-to-back years, almost beat Carolina, and now that they've punched their ticket to Omaha, get used to seeing West Virginia University. So get used to seeing the Mountaineers in Omaha. Get used to it. JJ Weatherholt, by the way, having one of the best rookie seasons a second baseman's ever had in the history of the MLB, at least in the last 2 decades. He was a top 10 pick from the Cardinals a couple of years ago. Carried this Morgantown, West Virginia baseball team. I also wanted on the record that the stadium we are seeing, when you see all these clips of West Virginia and their comeback wins against Kentucky, I called baseball games in that ballpark for the West Virginia Black Bears. Just want that on the record. I have called baseball games in the same booth those ESPN guys are in during the Super Regional and the Regional. I've called baseball games in that same booth. I just want that on the record. So I wish I could say on here and like I'm not a diehard West Virginia baseball fan. I'm not. I did not watch it. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be completely transparent. Barely watched any games until the playoff. So I'm not gonna come on here and just give you like, oh, I'm a diehard, blah 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 blah. But I am going to, you know, just heighten and try to like tell you guys just like how much this means to the state of West Virginia, which is consistently one of the most overlooked state. I'd argue the most overlooked state in in the United States of America, because at least your Arkansas, your Mississippi's, your other poor ass states, like they're in the SEC at least, right? No, that West Virginia, Big 12, baby. So shout out West Virginia, the most loyal fan base on the face of the planet, some of the nicest people on the face of the planet, despite listen, I'm not going to get into it, but it really is. Morgantown is a special, special place, and they deserve more spotlight than they deserve all of the hype, all of the spotlight that it's been getting right now, man. And I'm so happy for that baseball team. I'm so happy for the players. I'm so happy for all of the West Virginia people, all the West Virginia citizens that grew up and lived there their entire lives, and all they've known is West Virginia athletics, West Virginia sports. It's truly special, man. And I'll tell you what, Pitt can go fuck off. I I've said this before on here, and I'll say it one more time. Pitt University, the best weekend of Pitt University's entire existence is the backyard brawl when West Virginia comes to Pitt. That's the most fun Pitt students will ever have. I've had Pitt students tell me, yeah, the most fun I've had was my weekend in Morgantown. The most fun I've ever had like in my undergrad. It's just the truth. Pitt is a fucking joke. Pitt is genuinely a joke. That being said, they did beat us by like 20 in baseball this year, which is a tough look. A tough look. But what time does Pitt play on? What time does Pitt play tomorrow? When's Pitt's game in Omaha? When do they play in Omaha? Also, every single time there's a video of West Virginia universities singing "Country Roads," which they do across every single sport after a win. It's not just now. Like every single sport after a win, they sing it. Every little fucking rat that has to comment, actually, this song's about Western Virginia. You're not cool, bro. You get no pussy. Nobody. Time out. Time out. Time out. Time out. You're not that guy, though. Like, shut the fuck up. You're not cool. But shout out West Virginia baseball, man. Truly special. I wish I was there so bad. I wish I was there so bad. Also, shout out Matt Renner. I know we have our differences. I don't know if he's listening to this podcast. And this guy Quinn, we've also had our differences. We're in a dynasty fantasy football league together. But if you guys seen the clip of that tent that got blown over at Mongalia Ballpark or whatever they named it now after the guy that owns the Arizona Diamondbacks, whatever they call it. My friend Matt, I don't know if he was the guy that was not my friend. We're not friends, but this guy I'm in a dynasty league with, Matt. I don't know if that was him flying through the air, holding on to the concrete like leg of the tent. It very well might be. Him and this guy Quinn, I think his name is. Both, well, Quinn used to be in my dynasty, whatever. Either way, two guys that I have contacts in my phone. They said that they caught that tent. The reason that tent didn't go flying over the hill onto the field is because my guy Matt Renner and this guy Quinn held on for dear life to that tent. Allegedly, anyway. I believe him. He might be a little bit of a prick, but he's definitely not a not trustworthy guy. So shout out Matt Renner for saving everybody's life on the hill. Randy's World or whatever they were calling it. So shout out West Virginia baseball, man. It's surreal. I'm so happy for all the West Virginia fans finally getting their moment, and all the West Virginia players and all that. So shout out West Virginia baseball. Let's talk about it now. Top 10 edge rushers in the NFL. And I want to preface, the edge rusher position is not just about sacks. Not just about sacks. Now, I'm not under the boat where sacks are an overrated statistic because they're really relevant. Go look at the best edge rushers in the NFL. They get a lot of fucking sacks. Okay, so it's not an overrated metric by any stretch of the imagination, although it can be volatile from a year-to-year basis. And there's a lot of factors that go into being a good edge rusher beyond the sack number. What's your pass rush win rate? What's your run block win rate? What's your pressures like? What's your pressure to sack conversion ratio? How good are you finishing? Are you creating turnovers? How good are you against the run? Do you set the edge in the run game well? Are you able to play all three downs? Are you a liability in the fourth quarter when your team's down a touchdown with 4 minutes to go and you're on the field and you need to stop the run? Are you a liability against the 4-minute offense, or can you bear down, set the edge, and get a TFL? So all of that is encapsulated in this top 10 list, and I think I have put together a really, really solid list. Honorable mention is Nick Bosa. And I think he is the perfect fit for an honorable mention because when he is on the field, he is probably a top 5 edge rusher because he is incredible. However, 21 and a half sacks over the last 3 seasons, that's outside the top 30. And I know I just said sack production isn't everything, but that's bad. When he's healthy, top 5, arguably. Former defensive player of the year for a reason, but how can I rate you in the top 10 when over the last 3 seasons, you only have 21 and a half sacks? And you've only played 1 full season. And in that season, I think he only had 10 and a half sacks, which isn't an elite number to begin with. So Nick Bosa, honorable mention. Availability is the best ability. And if he puts together a full season campaign where he has 10 to 15 sacks, a couple of forced fumbles, an interception or two, then he can easily solidify himself back on the top 10. And I want on the record, this is top 10 edge rushers or top 10 defensive ends going into next season. And defensive edge rusher is a really interesting kind of conversation because like Myles Garrett's a defensive end. TJ Watt's probably an outside linebacker. We're going to just call them defense. We're going to put them all under one umbrella. Edge rusher / D end, whatever. Okay, that's what we're doing. Number 10, though, Jared Verse. And this is not just because He got traded a couple of days ago for Myles Garrett. Jared Verse genuinely off to one of the best starts of any NFL edge defender in the history of the league. He's top 2 in run stop win rate amongst edges in 2024 and in 2025. He had 100 pressures last year. He has 188 pressures across his first 2 seasons. That's the most in the history of the sport, in the PFF era anyway, since we started tracking pressures. Jared Verse is an absolute dog. The only problem is he's not converting these pressures into sacks. His pressure to sack conversion rate is definitely low. He only had 7.5 sacks last year on 100 pressures. That is a really low pressure to sack conversion rate, but still he's getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback. And he's probably part of the reason Kobe Turner had 10.5, 12.5 sacks, whatever it was, right? He's probably the reason that Braden Fisk is getting and Byron Young are having really good statistical seasons because Jared Verse is getting to the quarterback at an electric rate. In his rookie year, he had 11 TFLs with 2 forced fumbles, 18 QB hits. He is a dog. Jared Verse is a top 10 edge defender, defensive end in the NFL, and those are just his pass rushing stats. He's second in edge rush win rate, defensive stops, behind just Max Crosby back-to-back seasons. He's one of the best run defenders in the NFL. He's one of the best pure bull rushers in the NFL. Jared Verse at number 10, and that's not just because he just got traded. Now, here's a really compelling one, and that's TJ Watt, who I still have in the top 10. I have him at number 9, and you could argue he's not the best pure pass rusher on this defense. You could argue he's not even a top 2 pass rusher on this defense because Nate Herbig is electric. Alex Highsmith is electric as well. Although I wouldn't do that. I still think he's the best edge rusher on this defense. Like Nate Herbig played in a really limited role that was situational and very beneficial to the type of player that he is. You put TJ Watt in that role, I bet the production is ridiculous. But either way, TJ Watt is still a top 10 edge rusher, defensive end, outside linebacker, whatever, in the NFL. He had played with a collapsed lung last year, was still above average against the run, but his pass rushing numbers continue to drop a little bit. He had the lowest pass rush win rate of his career in 2024, and it was lower in 2025. But the reason we have him so high up here is because his turnover production is unbelievable. He has the most turnovers forced by a defensive end since 2023. And in 2024, he had a historic season defending the run. 1.6 average depth of tackle and a 3.2% negative play rate, the lowest among all box defenders in the NFL. TJ Watt also leads all edge defenders in turnovers over the last 3 seasons, like I said. So he is a full, complete defensive end / outside linebacker. He's a full 3-down player, and he can drop off into coverage and get a pick. And he can get after the quarterback, and he's one of the best strip sack specialists in the NFL. So even though we've seen a slight dip in his pass rush win rate, and then an even slighter dip in 2025, and the sack numbers aren't what they used to be, and the pressure rate isn't what it used to be, he did play through a collapsed lung last year, and his resume is good enough where it warrants the respect to still be a top 10 defensive end in the NFL. Not to mention his turnover production and his ability to and his ability against the run, which was still above average last year, but it did fall off. But in 24, it was one of the best run defensive seasons we've seen from a defensive end. He is a complete player. He's still a top 10 player in the NFL. Respect TJ Watt. Number 8. That being said, though, I still stand on it. I know I've not glazed TJ Watt enough on this podcast. I'll tell you what, I still think the Steelers should have traded him 3 years ago they could have got two first round picks for him. Like they could have. They should have traded him 2 years ago. Omar Khan's an idiot. All that being said, Omar Khan is still an idiot for not trading TJ Watt a couple of years ago when he could have got 2 first round picks for him and said he gave him a ridiculous contract when you have Nate Herbig and Alex Highsmith. That's neither here nor there. Number 8. And I think these 3 guys you can throw in any order, but I do have reasons for having one guy above the other. And that is number 8, Nick Bonito, number 7, Danielle Hunter, number 6, Brian Burns. I think Brian Burns is one of the most underrated defensive ends in the NFL. 3-time Pro Bowler, second in the NFL in sacks last year. 22 tackles for loss, which was 3rd in the NFL, 31 quarterback hits, which was 4th in the NFL, 3rd Pro Bowl appearance, 2nd team All-Pro, first player to account for 52% of his team's sacks more than 52% of his team sacks since J.J. Watt did it in 2014. Him and J.J. Watt are the only two players to account for more than 52% of their team's total sacks since 2000. That is genuine elite company. I'm not saying Brian Burns is J.J. Watt, but it's really telling of the type of player Brian Burns is on one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Now, he's not great against the run. Absolutely understand that. But the defense behind him is also awful. And there's a reason the Giants allowed 5.3 yards per carry, which led the NFL in worst total in terms of yards per carry allowed last year. Brian Burns had a little bit of partner because he gets upfield so fast. He doesn't exactly set the edge in the run game, but he is elite against elite pass rusher, man. He is. Yeah, and he's I'm stumbling on my words. Water break, timeout, water break. And what makes Brian Burns so elite is his ability to finish, because he had a 31% pressure to sack conversion rate. He had more sacks than Aiden Hutchinson. Aiden Hutchinson had 100 pressures. Brian Burns had 50 pressures. He finishes so unbelievable. When he gets his hands on you, and he is strong and long, when he gets his hands on you, you're done. You're cooked. Barbecue chicken. He's one of the best finishers in the NFL. 31% pressure to sack conversion rate. League average around 12 to 15%. Aiden Hutchinson, who I have higher on this list, 16%. And Hutch had 50 more pressures. So although he doesn't consistently get pressure a lot, although the Giants aren't in a lot of pass rush scenarios because they're dog shit and teams are usually winning. And if you're allowing 5.5 yards per carry on the ground, teams are likely going to run the ball against you. So despite being on a team that wasn't in a lot of pass rushing scenarios, he still was second in the NFL in sacks. He had a 30% pressure to sack conversion rate. He had 16.5 sacks on only 50-something pressures. He was second in the NFL amongst edge rushers in tackles for loss, fourth in QB hits, second team All-Pro. And like I said, Brian Burns is the most underrated edge rusher in the NFL. He accounted for 52% of the Giants' sacks last year. The only player since 2000 to be responsible for more than 52% of their team's sacks is J.J. Watt in 2014. Brian Burns had a 31% pressure to sack conversion rate, guys. You understand how stupid that is? Aiden Hutchinson had 50 more pressures and it's 16%. The league average on 12 to 14% pressure to sack conversion rate. And it's not like Brian Burns is playing on a team that's winning constantly and teams are dropping back and trying to throw the ball a lot, because the Giants are constantly losing. Teams are constantly trying to run the ball on them, especially when they're allowing 5.3 yards per carry, which was the worst in the NFL last season. They were the worst run defense in the NFL last season, which means teams are going to run the ball, which means not a lot of opportunity to rush the passer. And Brian Burns was still second in the NFL in sacks, second in the NFL in tackles for loss, 31 QB hits. He's elite. He is elite. He's one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. He is a dog. Now that the Giants finally have maybe a little bit of linebacker help behind him, a little bit of safety help behind him, a little bit of cornerback help behind him, maybe we can see those numbers even climb because they're going to be winning some games. And he'll get some more opportunities to get after the quarterback. Those pressure numbers will get higher. And if you can set the edge in the run game a little bit better, he's going to be a top 5 player on this list in no time. Now, the reason I have him above Danielle Hunter is because I have Benito at 8, Danielle Hunter at 7. Danielle Hunter, let me break this up. So ESPN and PFF both have two different pressure rate metrics. ESPN's is if you beat your blocker before 2.5 seconds. PFF's is if you beat your blocker on the rep in general. So teams that have good secondaries, or edge rushers that are on teams that have good secondaries, a good linebacker play behind them, their pass rush win rate is going to be higher for PFF because quarterbacks are holding on to the ball longer. And Danielle Hunter had a 20% pass rush win rate on PFF, 14% on ESPN. That makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because ESPN's is after 2.5 seconds. If you didn't win your rep, if you didn't get past your blocker, you didn't win the rep. So Danielle Hunter benefited a lot from playing on a defense that was the best defense in the league, in my opinion, but one of the best secondaries, top 2 corner in Derek Stingley, Will Anderson, Azeez Al-Shaair, Henry To'oTo'o, Kalen Bullock, Jalen Petrie, one of the best defenses in the NFL last year. Danielle Hunter benefited from that. Brian Burns didn't have that luxury. Brian Burns, and Nick Bonito also in that same tier as Danielle Hunter, but Danielle Hunter was more elite as a pass rusher and slightly better against the run. And I like Nick Bonito a whole lot. He deserves a spot on this. I have him over TJ Watt, and I think that's solid at this point. On back-to-back seasons with 13 plus sacks, top 5 in the NFL in sacks, back-to-back seasons, top 3 in 2020 on 2024. He does have a great defensive line around him: Zach Allen, John Franklin Myers, Jonathan Cooper's, but I don't want to punish him too much for that. 22% pressure to sack conversion rate, which is elite. 4 forced fumbles and interception of the last 2 years, which is elite. So really good turnover production. Plays on a really good defensive line. Not going to punish him too much for it, but he's not as good against the run as Hunter is or Burns is, although they're not great against the run either. That's why I have them all like sectioned into this spot here. But Brian Burns did it with no defensive help. Danielle Hunter and Nick Bonito did it with pretty good defenses around them. So that's why I have Burns at 6, and I have Danielle Hunter over Bonito, because the tiebreaker for me was Danielle Hunter created more turnover-worthy plays last year than Nick Bonito did. Higher pass rush. Or I don't know if it was higher, actually. I think it was really close. But Danielle Hunter also has a resume of it compared to Nick Bonito, 2 good years. The game was really close between Hunter and Bonito for me. I had Burns at 6 because he was getting pressure faster, and he was slightly worse in the run, but it was marginal. Number 5 is Max Crosby. And Max Crosby has had some down years from a pass rushing standpoint, but it's still been above league average in terms of sack production. He's the best edge setting defender in the NFL. Max Crosby has led the NFL in run block win rate amongst edge rushers 3 straight years. He's the best edge setter. He's one of the best run defenders in the NFL. That matters to me. And he has back-to-back down years from a sack standpoint. He still had a 10.5 sacks a couple years. Like, he's still been productive. It's just not been, 15. It's not monster sack numbers. It's not monster turnover numbers. But he was averaging 94 pressures from 2020 to 2023. He played injured in 24 and 25 and was still one of the best edge setters in the NFL. He deserves a spot in the top 5 easily. But then I think these next 4 have solidified themselves, in my opinion. If these guys aren't in your top 4, you've lost the plot here. And that's Will Anderson at 4 and Aiden Hutchinson at 3. And these guys are in a tier behind the guy at 2 and then the guy at 1, obviously. We won't even spend too much time on him when we get there because he deserves it for good reason. But Will Anderson, top 4 in pass rush win rate, 3 straight seasons, 2nd in 2024, 3rd in 2025. Anderson was one of the 4 edge rushers in the last decade to post a pressure rate above 20% through 12 weeks. Through 12 weeks. The others being Micah Parsons, Von Miller, and Jerry Hughes. PFF had him as the highest graded defender in the NFL last year. 102 pressures, 25% pass rush win rate, which led the league according to PFF anyway. ESPN had him at 23, like I said. But again, what we talked about earlier, the ESPN is before 2.5 seconds. So the fact that the drop-off is only 2% from PFF, which is did you win the rep in general, to ESPN, which is 2% lower, he's still winning at a really, really high clip, really, really fast, which was not the case for Danielle Hunter. And in the playoffs, he had 3.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 9 pressures. He remember that Seahawks game? He almost single-handedly won the Texans that Seahawks game. Now, the reason I have Aiden Hutchinson at 3 is because he had 7.5 sacks in 5 games 2 years ago, tore his ACL, came back, was 3rd in the NFL in sacks, and had 100 pressures and played 17 games, coming off a torn ACL the year after it looked like he was going to steamroll his way to an NFL Defensive Player of the Year. Now, Will Anderson, Aiden Hutchinson, you can flip-flop them either way, man. You really can. I think Aiden Hutchinson also has elite pressure rate on a not-so-good defense behind him. Well, Will Anderson, same with Danielle Hunter. And I hate punishing guys for being on good defenses, but it does mean something a little bit more to me if you're getting pressure when you're not going to get a coverage sack here and there. You're not gonna have extra time, even though it wasn't really a factor like we talked about with the ESPN and PFF. You can see the discrepancy between guys that get pressure quick and guys that need good defensive secondary to help them, and their pass rush moves are more longer developed, and they can't maybe win with the first step. That's not the case for Anderson. It was the case for Danielle Hunter, but Aiden Hutchinson led the NFL in pressure in 2025. Aiden Hutchinson joins Clay Matthews and Lawrence Taylor as the only players in NFL history to log at least 25 sacks and 4 interceptions through a player's first 3 seasons. He played 5 games in that 3rd season in 2024. That's ridiculous. 100 pressures in a season coming off a torn ACL. He's top 5. Now, number 2 is still Micah Parsons, man. Micah Parsons is unbelievable. 12.5 sacks, 12 TFLs in 14 games. And after Micah Parsons got hurt for Green Bay, they didn't win a single game where their starters played without Micah Parsons. And in games where their starters played, they only had 2 sacks and allowed 31 points per game, including a 4th quarter against the Bears where they allowed 25 points. Green Bay's defense was 0.11 yards per carry better with Parsons and zero point 0.2 yards per pass attempt better with him on the field. Parsons was third in the league in pressures, and he missed 14 fucking games. Or he missed 3 games. I'm sorry, he played 14 games. Since entering the league in 2021, Parsons ranks second amongst all edge rushers in pass rush grade, trailing only Myles Garrett. He was third in pass rush win rate. He was also top 5 in run stop win rate off the edge in 2024. He's the second best defensive end in the sport, top 3 defensive player in the sport when on the field behind just Pat Surtain and Myles Garrett, in my humble opinion. And Myles Garrett is the best defensive player in the NFL. 2-time defensive player of the year, 5-time first team All Pro, NFL single season sack record, unanimous number 1 edge rusher, the most sacks in the NFL since 2020, the most sacks in the NFL over the last 3 seasons by 7, top 5 in pass rush win rate over the last 3 seasons as well, with the most amount of snaps played off the edge. He is the gold standard. He is the best defensive end in the league. Hit that thumbs up button. Hit that subscribe button. I love you guys all. I'll talk to you guys in the next episode of the Fire Sports Takes podcast.